Previously on X-Men, the podcast that looks at X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. I'm Hillary.
I'm Nick.
And we've got a comic for you today.
That's right.
Today we're talking about the Curse of the Mutants because we had to figure out what the heck was going on with Jubilee and the vampires.
That's right. So this is really a sequel to our Jubilee Spotlight.
Yes. We had to figure this out.
Fans demanded it. They were like, more vampire Jubilee.
Vampire-related Jubilee content,
yeah.
please. So Curse of the Mutants was a year-long arc in X-Men, and it ran from July 2010 to May 2011.
Boy, they really took their time telling this story.
I'm actually surprised that they spent this much time on it, but okay. So this has been conveniently collected for us in 3 trade paperbacks. X-Men, Curse of the Mutants, X-Men, Mutants vs. Vampires, Namor, the First Mutant, Curse of Mutants.
A lot of colons.
There was also a follow-up miniseries called Wolverine and Jubilee, which I didn't actually read.
I did read it because I wanted answers and none were provided.
That's what I figured.
Yeah. How deep did you go? Did you read the Namor stuff? Did you read Mutants vs. Vampires?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't read those. I just saw like the results of them, I guess.
That's really all you need.
Yeah.
But, I will say Mutants vs. Vampires has a rogue story that was written by the late Peter David.
Oh, you love Peter David.
I do love Peter David, and I was sad to hear of his death.
Yes.
Peter David She-Hulk is some of my favorite Marvel comics ever.
What do you like about him?
I don't know. They're just so funny. I remember buying those issues like as they were coming out. There's one with She-Hulk and Spider-Man, and I just had never read something quite so irreverent, I guess, and like the right to camera kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like it was just very unusual, and I was just really digging it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so the little Peter David tucked away in one of these side collections, and as a whole, those were not great. So I think your choice of just reading the main story was
well, I've
the way
gotten
to go.
caught up in those kinds of things because the Marvel app will give you if there's a like a world spanning or universe spanning thing, you can just read through all of the tiny little side plots, and I don't know why you would ever do that.
Well, longtime listeners might remember that this is how you became such a Venom fan.
It is, but I also that is still an example because like the King in Black stuff touches everything.
Yeah, it
and
sure
so if that storyline touches on anything, in something else, you get it in that reading list. Even if it's not actually about that or furthering the plot in any way.
When we get into the breakdown here, you'll see where Mutants and Vampires or the Namor stuff comes in. And it really is like you read the story and you don't miss it. You get the context in these side things, and it's like, okay. Yeah. Like if you're super into X-Men versus Vampires, then, go for it.
So if I was in charge of these reading lists... Maybe I would have 2. Maybe I would have one for like the crazy people who need, like Eric, who need every tiny little piece. Yeah. And then one that's like, here's how the story goes.
Yeah. I think some of the more detailed stuff, they do have sort of like, you know what? It's the DC app. The DC app breaks it down and things like that, where it can be like, if you want the main arc, do this.
Yeah.
If you want everything, do this.
All right. That's the only thing I like better about DC now.
Rude.
Yeah. Anyway, so this was mainly written by Victor Gischler, Stuart Moore, Dwayne Swierczynski, Chuck Kim, Catherine Immonen, and then some others.
Well, the side stories, I mean, there's a million, one author may have written, just like Peter David, I think only is credited for one little sub-story. So there's a whole slew. Art
was by Paco Medina, Ariel Olivetti, Phil Noto, and others.
And others, correct.
Some others. So... the main story begins, from what I read, in San Francisco.
Yes. So there is a Dracula one-shot where you get a little bit of a background on the whole, what's going on in the vampire world. Which
again, I don't need.
Yeah, you don't really need it. It was sort of helpful to know, but yeah. Basically, it's a power struggle. Xeris, the son of Dracula, kills Dracula, and then there's like him and his uncle are kind of beefing, and then they're just like, let's take over everything.
So it's just to get Xeris, who's like the villain of this arc, into position.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So in San Francisco, Jubilee is hanging out with Pixie in like a market or something.
Yes.
And they're having a nice time. They're talking about how Jubilee doesn't have her powers, but she still is part of the family or something. And also, this is when the X-Men are on the West Coast.
Yeah, the Utopia base in San Francisco.
There's like an island off the coast.
Yeah.
It's just yet another time for Cyclops to be standing up to the world, being like, I will protect my people, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing.
Okay.
Jubilee and Pixie are having a nice time, and this dude comes in and explodes.
Right.
like a suicide bomber kind of situation. But I don't think it kills anybody.
Yeah, it's not like an explosion. Like
it's like he has something. But there's like a little bit, like there's like some clear thing that someone is like getting him to do this.
Right.
Like he's part of some group.
Yeah.
So he explodes.
Right.
And gets his blood all over the people who are around him.
Including
Jubilee. Pixie, I think, seems fine. I don't think she gets it.
No, she misses it.
So Xeris is now here, and we see like his little machinations in the background.
Yeah.
He seems happy
Excellent.
that this has happened.
Right. Yep.
The end to that.
Yes.
So Jubilee goes to the Utopia base because she's sick or something. I can't remember how she presents as sick.
Yeah. They're like, we have to get this checked out quickly, and so they bring her back to the base.
So Dr. Nemesis, who I know very little about,
okay,
but is like their doctor right now, and Dr. Rao are checking Jubilee out, and they've discovered that she is infected with something. Cyclops and Wolverine have an inkling of what's going on here because of previous experiences.
Right.
On the street, we see that other people who I guess have been affected in a similar way are starting to, they're becoming like acolytes, like vampire acolytes.
They're all feeling called to Xeris and like the vampire horde.
Yes, and this is all coming to fruition is the vibe. Cyclops and Wolverine, particularly Wolverine, I think, are like, okay, well, I know what this sounds like. This is going to be... And they don't say vampires for a little bit, but eventually they get pretty direct about it.
Yes.
So Cyclops goes to Storm because, as we know, she has a history with Dracula.
We do know about this.
She doesn't actually seem to be very helpful, but I think it's nice that they remember that she...
It was a good bit of continuity.
Yes, that she has that experience. So then Wolverine and Angel and Pixie are like investigating,
basically,
I guess, to see what's going on, and they end up getting in a fight with the vampires.
Right.
So again, back at Utopia, Cyclops is talking to Dr. Nemesis. They're looking for a way to cure Jubilee because I guess she's just going to become a vampire. They know that she's going to become a vampire.
They've kind of accepted this is happening.
And she's sort of like sitting in the corner being like, I'm not going to fall for it or whatever.
And this section is kind of, we're seeing a little bit of them talking, like figuring out what's going on, and then we're jumping back to Wolverine and Angel and Pixie, and the vampire fight is getting like more and more intense. So it's kind of like alternating between like, what could this be? And Wolverine being like, ruh-roh. And that's issue 1.
Yeah, so then we get into issue 2, back with Wolverine and Colossus. They're going to catch a vampire, because if they catch a vampire, they want it alive or, not whatever it is, like a healthy vampire.
Yes.
They want it intact so that they can use its blood or whatever, find a cure for Jubilee.
Yeah.
I think in general, they don't feel super hopeful about Jubilee, is the vibe I get.
I think Wolverine is committed to it. But yeah, I feel like it is kind of a fool's errand all around.
Yeah. So while they're fighting these vampires, trying to get one for the cure, they run into...
Blade!
Yeah. How appropriate. Yeah. It's a vampire story, so we have Blade.
I'm glad they bring him in nice and early, because this is one of those things where you're like, all right, somebody call Blade. You know what I mean? And they actually do. He's here.
Yep, he's there.
And Blade knows the whole background about, like, the schism within the vampire world.
Blade read the initial
He read the one shot, yes, and he catches them up to speed. This is basically for those who did not read that. He's like...
And it was all I needed.
Yeah.
He said, Dracula's dead. His son killed him.
There you go.
All I needed to know. So then, back at Utopia, Blade and Wolverine and all of them update everybody else about what the deal is with Xeris. And they're not really sure what his goal is.
I think from like Cyclops' standpoint, he has some level... I guess it's like the devil you know kind of thing. It's like, okay, we're dealing with Dracula, so we have to go into like X-Men vampire mode. And then when they find out that it's not Dracula, that it is this wild card, then everybody's kind of like, ooh, what do we do now? I don't know.
And so we get to see Xeris' perspective, and what he's actually looking for is to just take over. Like, he wants to turn everybody into vampires. Great. Yeah,
Dracula's been sort of content with his whatever coalition, whatever you want to call it, and Xeris is like, no, let's globalize this thing.
There's like sects of the vampires, right?
Right. Yeah, because it was also like his uncle was a part of it. It's a whole thing.
Because there's different, like they all look different. Like there's some that look like old-timey monster vampires.
So more like an armor kind of look, and others that are sort of business suity. So yeah, there's different
But
things.
I think Xeris is trying to unite them all, right? And like take over.
I think that's the goal, yes.
So
yes.
Blade and the X-Men are like, okay, so we have to deal with the vampires. It's not looking good. They have this new thing that they're doing, that they're like exploding people and getting people infected, and it's just too much.
Yeah. And while that's all going down, Jubilee sort of, she's been feeling this like siren call, and while Blade is there and they're talking and everything, she sneaks out of Utopia.
In classic teen girl fashion. Although I don't think she's a teen girl anymore.
Probably not, but still.
Still feels right.
She heads to Xeris.
So what they decide to do...
Madness.
It is a crazy plan, but it also feels familiar. Like, I feel like I've seen this kind of thing before. But as you were saying, the devil you know...
Right.
Cyclops decides that what they need to do to defeat Xeris and the vampires is to bring Dracula back to life.
Right.
Because I guess he seems reasonable and they can work with him or whatever.
So.
Or like, you know, even if they're just like fighting, then they're fighting each other instead of...
I think one of the points he makes is like, if Dracula's back in the picture, they'll have to sort of turn more internal because there'll be all this infighting and like...
So they can't be focusing on taking over the world.
Right, yeah.
So that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. I liked that it was Wolverine who was kind of like, no, he's right. The X-Men are like, this is a terrible idea. And Blade, of course, is like, this is crazy. But Wolverine is kind of like, no, I get it. I get it. And they have sort of a loose, like, I don't know, camaraderie in this that I kind of like.
Yeah. So they send Namor to get the head.
Yeah, because Namor's sort of in the mutant fold at this point, and Namor's like, look, the head is buried in Atlantis, like, I could get this, and the body is over here, because Xeris separated the two.
Yeah, and they send Storm and Gambit to get the body, which is smart, because they're very sneaky.
Right. Gambit's a thief.
Yeah, Storm too.
That's true. And these are the sections that kind of split off into the other titles. So the Namor collection is all about Namor getting the head, and one of the main stories in the Mutants versus Vampires thing is this Gambit Storm team up. And while it's cool to have those two characters in a story together, it's just, there's not much to it. It's very skippable. So
yeah. Well, I skipped it.
You did, yeah, and you were just fine.
And I was fine. So then we're on to issue 3. Jubilee is gone. We all, like, the X-Men know this, and Wolverine freaks out, and so he's got to go save her.
Yeah. And they had been running some tests. Dr. Nemesis, when he's trying to figure things out, he was like, how do Wolverine's healing things work with it? So they've all been kind of tested and everything. And so this is all going on, and they're focusing on their plan. And Wolverine is, I'm going off by myself.
He lone wolfs it, as one might expect from Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
So those side stories happened, and now Gambit and Storm and Namor come back with the body and the head of Dracula, and they just... put his head back on.
There's no like ceremony or anything like that. Cyclops pulls a stake out of the heart, I think, and puts them together, and he's like, woo!
Yeah, he's back.
10,000 years! No, that's Genie from Aladdin, sorry.
So, yeah, he's back. He recognizes Storm.
Yeah, he's like, hey!
And I don't know if they must have him tied up or something.
Yeah, he is. He's bound.
Okay, but he's there, and they're going to figure that out. Meanwhile, Wolverine has found the stronghold where the vampires are and where Jubilee is there. She's all, like, captured.
Help me, Wolverine!
Help me! So he goes and saves her, but surprise, it was a trick.
Yes.
And Jubilee bites him.
Right.
Bites Wolverine. And then... doesn't she have like a little outfit? Like she's all like vampire, vamped up, you might say.
Yeah, she does have her outfit. Mm-hmm.
So now, what's going to happen to Wolverine? Right. That's not ideal.
That's a question.
And that was a thing. I think that they were kind of excited about it being Wolverine specifically, like the vampires were like, this is great, that it's it's Wolverine.
Right.
Somehow fits into their plan. Back in Utopia with Dracula, they're talking to him about what's going on with his son and the vampires and everything, and... Cyclops just releases him into the world.
Yeah, they don't really even have a deal. Cyclops is just kind of like, look, this stuff is going on. I assume you're going to want your power back. Have a great day.
Yes. And so off he goes.
To
find his son.
Mm-hmm.
So back at the lair with Wolverine, his healing ability is causing them some issues. They're wondering if it's going to fight off the curse, but it doesn't. Wolverine goes vampire.
Yes.
Surprise.
And that's our cliffhanger for the end of issue 3.
Yeah. Issue 4.
Okay, I have a question about where we begin in issue 4, because they are using Cerebro to find vampires. And I was like, is that a thing? Could Cerebro just find vampires?
I mean, it can find specific, like it can find humans or it can find mutants. So I guess, I don't know.
I don't know either. I just thought it was weird.
I mean, I think the science of Cerebro is pretty nebulous in general.
Okay. Well, so they're tracing 911 calls that seem like they're vampire related, and they're also watching where vampires are, and they're trying to sort of like triangulate, like, where is this coming from and everything. So it's that's kind of what they're doing. They're trying to figure this out because they're trying to stop these things before the transitions happen. So they are like, all right, everybody team up, go off, and, stop people from turning into vampires.
So while they're waiting for Dracula to kind of shake all of this up, they're just trying to
minimize the damage.
Okay.
Yeah, and this sets up the Mutants versus Vampires, the little anthologies that you get in that collection.
Okay.
Because it's just 2 X-Men fighting a vampire. Next.
Okay, so that helps this, because the next thing is that Angel and Blade come
classic Angel
to
Blade
the stronghold.
team up.
So the fact that there are issues of other things with different characters helps with that, because I when I read this, I was like, oh, Angel and Blade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody basically is just drawing lots, to see who they're partnered with. Yep.
Unusual. But anyway, so Angel and Blade, they go to Xeris' lair. They are quickly overpowered and they run away.
Yeah, they're like, we can't handle this, and they get out of there.
But they found it, so that's something. Wolverine and Jubilee are enjoying life as vampires.
Yep, they are. They're really having a good time.
So the X-Men and the vampires communicate.
Yeah.
Is it a call?
They hop on
like
a Teams meeting, yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Okay, so they're talking, and the X-Men see Jubilee and Wolverine are vampires now. Okay, so they have their call. It's done.
Yeah.
Whatever. So Xeris tells the vampires that they need to turn all of the X-Men into vampires, except for Cyclops.
Cyclops and Xeris have sort of locked in as like they are the enemies of each other, and Xeris,
so just out of spite.
Out of spite. Yeah,
okay,
he's spiteful.
So kill Cyclops, turn all the rest of the X-Men. They seem to like the idea of mutants being vampires,
right? And they want, Xeris wants Cyclops' head specifically, and Wolverine's like, okay,
I will do that. That is fine with me. The X-Men aren't feeling particularly confident, and they haven't heard what's going on with Dracula.
They're kind of feeling like Utopia is like the last, everybody else's turn, and it's just Utopia, and everybody's like, Cyclops, you said Dracula was going to do something about this. Where is he?
Yeah. So that's how that issue ends.
Yes.
Then we get to issue 5. They're just all preparing for battle.
This is like in West Side Story, where they're like, the Jets are gonna have their way tonight. Like that.
Yes, so they're getting ready. Emma does her diamond thing. They get Angel to do the Archangel thing, which I don't think I knew he could just turn on and off.
Yeah, he did. He just was like, woo.
But it was, one of them was like, would you mind doing that? And he was like, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was unusual.
The dumbest thing that happens in this is Iceman related. And I love Iceman so much.
I forgot about this. So Iceman goes ice form.
Yeah.
And the trick is the water of his body has been blessed by a priest.
There's like a priest shows up and does a little ceremony. Now Iceman is just like living holy water.
He's holy water now.
Very lame. I would love for Nightcrawler to weigh in on that, because it feels a little sacrilegious.
On the other hand, it does sound like something that had they not done it, you would have brought up and been like, you know what they should have done?
They should have just turned him.
They should have just turned Iceman into holy water.
Nothing like this ever happened in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Very much sounds like something you would want them to do. So Namor calls the Atlanteans. Great. They're gonna fight as well, which is nice because it's an island.
Yeah.
So there's water.
That is helpful. How do you feel about Namor as an X-Men, as a mutant? Do you care at all?
I mean, not a huge amount. I like that he's a mutant. I guess I think that's interesting.
All right.
I don't
just checking in.
Super care. Namor.
Yeah.
So they're going to fight. They fight. Wolverine is going after Cyclops to get his head.
And then we get a twist.
But then there's a twist. Cyclops plans for everything. Mm-hmm. He has a remote.
A little remote.
A remote, which he has apparently done something to Wolverine.
Yes.
With or without Wolverine's knowledge? Not sure.
Without Wolverine's
without
knowledge.
Wolverine's knowledge.
When they basically
or
we get
consent.
That's right. We get a little flashback in black and white, and Cyclops is like, "Remember when we were testing your healing ability? Well, I may have had the doctor put a kill switch in you because I knew that you were not to be trusted with Jubilee at stake." And Wolverine's not happy about that.
Yes, but it was smart.
And honestly. It works.
He goes
and Wolverine's
nuts with...
his healing ability is kind of popping back in, and he expunges the vampirism.
Yes. And he's back to being good. Jubilee, still bad.
Still bad. Yeah.
So, it doesn't really seem like anybody's getting anywhere. It's fighting, but they're not really... Nobody's winning.
Right. Which I don't understand how the vampires aren't winning. I guess we have the Atlanteans and everything, but it just seems like...
well, I mean, vampires
in a numbers game
are strong, but it's just a very specific thing. Like, there's mutants. Kind of, when it's a whole mess of mutants, they just win. That's just how it goes. Yeah, I guess that's true.
It just always feels like there's like 50 vampires and like 5 X-Men.
Yeah, but all you gotta do is poke a vampire and they die.
That's a fair point.
So, anyway, they are at a stalemate. Zaris, what are we saying?
I've been saying Zaris.
Zaris orders all of the vampires to go in.
Yeah.
Sadly, they are already in.
He's got a little lieutenant who's like, boss, point of order, they are all in.
So then Dracula comes at Zaris's lair or wherever he is.
And this is completely new information for all the vampires, because for all they know, he's dead and in multiple pieces.
Yes. So he just comes from a very strong position and is just like, I am the leader. I will pardon you all, except for my son.
And that's issue 5.
So issue 6 begins. Zaris is like, forget this pardon situation. Just kill Dracula. But the vampires will not kill Dracula.
Yeah.
I don't know if they like him or they are afraid of him, but whatever, they...
Basically, like, Dracula's back, and they're like, yeah, sorry, man.
We're just going to stick with Dracula.
We're going to stick with...
Who killed Dracula to begin with?
Zaris.
Zaris killed Dracula?
Yeah, in the one shot. Yeah.
So he tried it, didn't work, and they're just like, forget it?
Yeah, I guess.
All right. So then, Wolverine leads the X-Men to where Zaris and now Dracula are.
Yeah, because Wolverine's been in, like, the inner sanctum because he was a vampire.
Right. Dracula kills Zaris.
Yeah, that happens pretty fast, and it's like, oh, okay. I guess Zaris is dead.
Yes. And Cyclops is like, okay, bygones, because I guess you saved us from your son.
Yeah.
Go with God.
Yes.
Just
go and
be a Dracula
somewhere.
Yeah. So Blade is like, no. And he tries to kill Dracula, but Cyclops saves Dracula from Blade.
Yeah.
Not the coolest move,
no.
But I guess he's decided that they are in...
You just see Blade going for Dracula, and he takes an optic blast to the back.
Yeah, it's
not a cool move from Cyclops.
Also, especially because Blade is not part of the X-Men.
No, he's not.
It's not even like one of his people was going rogue or something.
No, Blade is a vampire hunter by trade.
Vampire hunter. He hunts vampires.
Yep.
So Cyclops is just like the honor, you know? He's like, we did this together. Dracula did his part, so we're even or whatever.
Yeah. So it's a little bit in disarray now because Cyclops has just taken out Blade, and I think the X-Men are even a little bit like, are we sure about this? We have a vampire killer and the king of the vampires. Should we maybe... And Cyclops to Dracula is like, listen, we implanted something in our own dude, and we had your head for 17 hours. So do you really think we wasted that time? And you can see Dracula sort of like mulling it over. And he plays it off like, you know what? You're bluffing, but that's good for you. And we'll part as gentlemen friends. And so does Dracula buy it or not? We don't know. And later, Emma is like, so were you bluffing? And then Scott sort of demurs. And she's like, you know what? I don't even want to know. And so we never know if they did anything to Dracula's
Here's the thing, though. Emma definitely knows.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Blade has decided that since Jubilee is a vampire, he needs to kill her.
Right.
Wolverine's like, no. And so Blade is like, fine. He just leaves.
Yep.
And she is the X-Men's problem. Jubilee is now a vampire.
Yeah.
And now we know how she became a vampire.
Yes, we do.
How did she stop being a mean vampire?
Well, that is what the Wolverine and Jubilee miniseries is about. But it's not really a clean answer. Wolverine decides to take her off, and they go to Siberia where it's like dark most of the time, so she can have a little time. And there's something with it becomes a whole thing. There's zombies. It's a whole. By the end, it was like, okay, well, it seems like she's on the up and up now. The end. It really wasn't a satisfying conclusion.
And then for the foreseeable future, it was just like, if Jubilee was in a story, it would be like, oh yeah, and you're a vampire, so you can't go outside. It was
that Generation X.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was interested to read this because I
what the heck? Why is Jubilee a vampire?
But it's interesting to read it because it seems like Jubilee being a vampire is really just kind of what sets the story off, but it's not really about that.
Yeah.
And yet it's such a big thing to have like a beloved character now be a vampire for the next decade. It's weird to have that just be an afterthought. And then they're just like, oh, we didn't fix Jubilee. Well, I guess
they could have just fixed her in this story.
Yeah.
So they must have wanted her to be a vampire for some reason.
I mean, I wish that I felt like there was more, and I don't know, I haven't read a lot. Like, this is going into an era like the 2010s where, like, I haven't read a ton of X-Men right there, and so I don't really know, like, how much of a plot that is. But it feels like without that, the whole thing would have been for nothing. So at least there's stakes.
Stakes.
So, I mean, at least something carries over, but it's a weird thing to carry over.
Yeah.
I learned that this is not a well-liked story in the X-Men fandom.
I can't imagine why.
It really, it's not a good read, I don't think.
I don't know. I mean, I guess there have been like supernatural elements of X-Men that I haven't hated, but I just don't go to X-Men for this kind of storytelling.
Right.
Ever.
I know. Well, I think sometimes, the scope of it to me is weird, to have a schism in the vampire world and now the vampires are just going to kind of like go after everyone. It's just too big of a story to wrap up in 6 issues and some change, like if it was like the vampires are going to take out the X-Men once and for all, that would maybe make a little bit more sense to me than something. It's like it's too big.
And why is it centered on the X-Men? Like if Marvel wanted to do some big vampire story, like why isn't it a Blade story? Or I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't understand the connection.
I don't either.
Except that Dracula hung out with Storm for a bit in that one issue.
Yeah, and this is kind of like where are we at? This is like when X-Men First Class, like when that kind of stuff was going on. Like that was what the X-Men in pop culture was, and so this is such a weird story, to focus. I don't know. I don't understand.
Maybe they were just running out of ideas, and they were like, what about vampires?
Maybe. But this starts, this is the first 6 issues of a new ongoing X-Men story. And so to start it with this arc, it doesn't put the X-Men in an interesting place. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Thumbs down, I guess.
Yeah, didn't like it. It was dumb.
Also, Jubilee's really not in it. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't really have much to do.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I guess now I know why she's a vampire.
Now you know.
And that's all
now we all
went into this
have
wanting.
Experienced this together, and now we know. So,
oh well.
Okay.
Thanks for reading that dumb book with me.
Yeah, I guess, sure. I mean, I really went the distance also. I feel I should get some extra credit.
Yes, but you do. You do get extra credit.
It's fine.
Next time, we're going to be back with X-Men 97 with Tolerance is Extinction.
The finale.
Two-parter. Two-parter?
Okay. Yeah, it's a 3-parter.
3-parter.
Yeah.
So that will be exciting.
Yes.
Until then, thank you to Prophetic Music for our theme song. Previously on X-Men is brought to you by the Radio Meanwhile Network. Other shows on the network include This and Dorian Life and 9021 Here We Go. Please rate, subscribe, and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. And don't become a vampire.
Yeah, have a lot of garlic around the house just to be safe.
Bye.